Hey, it's Jessica Goose here with RealAgriculture.com, and joining me right now is Brooks and Jen White. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today, guys.
Happy to.
So first off, I guess, whereabouts and what do you produce?
Oh, well, we farm in southwest Manitoba. Pierson is the name of our town. Our farm borders North Dakota and Saskatchewan.
Okay.
What do we produce? Anything we can. So this year our crop plan was about 12 different crops, and with that, most of that included the use of intercrops. So mixing either of those crops together to get multiple species growing at the same time. And on top of that, our main livestock species we're raising is bison.
Bison. Okay. And Jen, what's your role on the farm? More of the marketing
I'm the boss.
You're the boss, exactly.
I have a sign that says
As
it.
most farm wives are. Where do you play a role into this?
So I'm sort of the office girl, the office manager. I do, all that fun bookwork stuff.
Yeah.
And then I also can just fill in wherever needed. I can drive a grain cart. I haven't drove the combine yet, though.
Maybe next year.
Next year.
That'll be good.
No, we can...
But you make sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, which is good at the end of the day.
And then we have 2 young kids, too, so, we're busy with them. And, So.
But intercropping now, this is, I would say, somewhat new, but not. It has been around for a while. How long have you decided to kind of take 2 plants and grow them together?
Well, first off, intercropping is probably far older than monocrop because intercropping is nature, right? And we're trying to learn from nature and trying to mimic what she has taught us. And monocrops for us, we just found in our system were not working. And so we kind of stumbled on this by accident in the late 2000s, and we started playing with it on small scale. And when we started putting multiple species together, we started finding soil interactions that were happening, and our soil structure was improving, and the water was going in the soil. And then in years following, we were getting better crops, and we didn't understand why. We kept doing this on small scale. By 2012, we started doing this on large-scale field operations. Still not on our whole farm, but in the last 3 years, we've tried to move our whole farm in this direction. And so as of this year, 75% of our farm was intercropped, and going forward, those numbers are going to keep increasing as we transition some of those acres.
One thing that stood out for me that you said is that you really do have to pay attention to feeding your soil, not just the plant, and especially, I believe, with making sure that there is a good amount of moisture in the ground, right? How does how does that kind of combine and work all together for you? I guess the simple question is what's better?
well, for us, it's not about yield and getting our yield better. It's getting profitability better. We can take a step back in our yield, but if we're making more money,
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. Yeah, that's where we need to get to. So that was the whole thing we realized was we weren't making money farming the way we were. What can we change to try to do that? So intercropping is one of those ways we can do it. And when we start looking at intercropping, we're replacing many of those nutrients that we were buying, and we're getting them from nature. So we're bringing them from the air, and we're getting them into the soil, and we're using certain plants to unlock other nutrients in the soil. So it's biological farming and trying to find a way to nourish that crop and ultimately nourish the food with minimal synthetic inputs at this time is where we're at.
And that was something that you mentioned on your panel as well. I think you guys were slowly starting to kind of look at what's out there to potentially not even use glyphosate, right? And you even mentioned it with giving part of your regenerative plan is to know what the consumer wants and really sell to that, right? How does that kind of, I guess, play in?
Well, I think ultimately the consumer is going to tell us what they want to buy, and we as farmers need to be able to respond to that. So if they're going to tell us that they want less herbicide on their food, we need to figure out how to grow it. So we're just trying to get ahead of the game a little bit and trying to find different ways of doing it and different crops that we can farm with. So.
No, exactly that. What have you found, I guess, first off, hasn't worked? One thing I believe you said are faba beans and lentils. That was not really a good year. Can you explain to me kind of what happened?
Well, fortunately, it was small scale. We like to experiment small scale to start with before we go large scale. So that was a small scale trial, but basically what it was faba beans thrive in a wet environment. Lentils thrive in a drier environment. So my thought process was, if we put both of them together, one's going to work. We're going to self-insure.
Yeah.
So I hope that both would work, that we would find that happy medium, and we would get a crop of both that we would separate and sell. It turned into a wet year. The faba beans thrived, and they outcompeted the lentils, and every lentil died because it wasn't their environment. But the story of that is it was still a success because the faba beans still were a crop, and we basically self-insured ourselves. So although it didn't work, I hope to get lentils that we would be able to sell. We still got a faba bean crop out of it.
What has worked, I guess? Did you mention piola? I couldn't remember if that was one that you have done on a bigger scale, I guess.
So peas and canola, and we call it piola, and that seems to work really well. It seems to be a pretty well proven one. It's been done for a lot of years, and it's fairly simple to do. The herbicide programs work together. The lentils help to feed the nitrogen through the rhizobia bacteria that feeds the canola plants, and the canola acts as a trellis to hold the peas up off the ground, making harvest easier. So the whole system just works. And then it maintains more residue on the soil to cover the soil for the following crop, and it just leaves a healthier soil structure.
And so what would you say to other farmers that are potentially thinking about starting up intercropping? What advice would you kind of give them?
Okay, so the first thing is to find a mentor. And when we first started, I had the fortunate relationship with a local research farm manager who I could bounce ideas back and forth off of, and sometimes they were bad ideas, and he would tell me that why this isn't going to work. So it's just finding a mentor or a peer group. We found a lot of value in peer groups, and just bouncing ideas back and forth, and just find another farmer that's got the same mentality or the same thought process, and seeing what they think, and they're going to give you their recommendations. But the biggest thing is just to get out there and start trying something.
Start small.
Start small.
I want to start small, I would think.
Yeah, start small, but do something. It's like until you actually get something in the ground and start playing with it, then you've got an invested interest in it, and you're going to learn from it. And then next year, try to improve a little bit, and keep costs low to start with, and just use it all as a learning experience.
You mentioned that you guys have bison as well. How do you kind of take intercropping into play with that? Does it work with feed? How does that kind of intertwine?
Yeah, so for us, if an intercrop doesn't work, we've got a backup. The bison can harvest it for us, or if it's a lot of our intercrops we grow with a target for a feed source for them. We like to graze the bison right through the year. So some of these intercrops that we put together are designed for winter grazing, or just to graze the residue after we've harvested the intercrops. We get the bison in there and we harvest a little bit more revenue off of that. So for us, finding cover crops is another form of intercrop. So putting these cover crops after our annual crop production, we can try to get the bison in there and capture a little bit of revenue out of it that way.
So it really works.
And then it's like we have 600 combines rather than just one.
Exactly. Jen, this was also an exciting year for you guys, as you are the Manitoba Young Farmers for this year, the winners for that. Explain to me, I guess, about the submission, and I guess more about how the farm is regenerative and how it's holistically regenerative.
Yeah, well, our farm has a vision, and it's to regenerate. Regenerate our soil, regenerate our business, and regenerate agriculture in general.
We're just trying to share a story.
Yeah.
And being part of the OIF program, it has been an honor. I think that the biggest benefit we're seeing from it already happening is the relations we're forming with some of the people in the alumni organization, and I see it opening new doors and opportunities pretty fast coming forward as we get into this group, because these are some pretty unique farmers that are out there, and I'm really excited to get to know some of them better.
And you guys are really our champions in being that advocate, right? And I believe you mentioned even, and we're just now, like you said, forming those relationships, those friendships with groups, and really bouncing ideas off of each other, right?
Absolutely.